Staying in Ukraine, one weapon has revolutionized the battlefield. The drone. It's cheap, precise, and widely available. Many of them are now immune to high-tech jamming. In southern Ukraine, local authorities have begun using something very simple to try to stop them. DW's Nick Connolly got a demonstration.
This is a Russian drone chasing a Ukrainian army pickup. Jamming the drone's signal used to offer some protection, but many newer drones no longer need a signal that can be jammed. They're connected to their operators by ultra-thin cables. And it's not just military vehicles being hit. Whole stretches of road along the front lines are being shut to civilian traffic because anything that moves is liable to be hit. There's a reason you've probably seen less reporting from the trenches and the front lines here in Ukraine over the past year. Now, anyone, anywhere within about 20 to 30 kilometers of front lines is at very real risk of being hit. We're heading towards Orikhiv, just a few kilometers from Russian lines. Only a few hundred of its 14,000 pre-war inhabitants are left. The town's children have all been evacuated.
The Russians use swarm tactics. You'll have 4 or 5 drones hovering above the main routes in and out at all times, waiting.
This, they hope, will be part of the solution. Nets. Kilometers of nets. The soldiers here call it the Tunnel of Life, but it's not just a single road. Here in Orikhiv, they're trying to cover as much of the town as they can in nets.
We know that these nets aren't going to hold up a heavy drone. They'll punch a hole in the net, but at least they'll be slowed down. Most likely, they won't hit their target.
It's a hodgepodge of different nets. Some of them are from construction sites, others were donated by farmers or even fishers from as far away as Holland. The volunteers providing the nets to places like Orikhiv tell us they were skeptical it would work, but the feedback about these giant cobwebs soon exceeded their expectations. This here is original fishing netting. You can tell from the floats, from the cord, and it is virtually invisible to the drone cameras, to the small FPV drones that are attacking people here every day. But there is also an unintended consequence. Songbirds, owls, and even stag beetles have all been getting caught up in the mesh of the fishing nets. It's wide enough to let them get caught up, but too narrow to let them free themselves. We meet the head of Orikhiv's military administration in his improvised underground office. Russian glide bombs and artillery have destroyed all the town's government buildings.
Obviously, these nets aren't going to stop heavy artillery or missiles, but they really work against drones, and they're cheap. People around here have stopped using cars to get around. They avoid gathering outside.
But not everyone can afford to stay put. The district's farmers need to leave the protected areas to harvest their crops and keep fire extinguishers to hand. This fire was caused by a Russian drone that missed its target. Not everyone is as lucky. A separate Russian drone strike took out this combine harvester just a few days before we arrived, seriously injuring the driver. It's on all the farmers' minds here as they try to gather a bad harvest after an icy spring. Finding downed drones and unexploded shells on their fields has become part of daily life.
We don't know what will happen in 5 minutes' time, let alone tomorrow or the day after. I'm here talking to you and a drone could fly over and blow up at any moment. All you can do is be glad you've survived another day.
While there'll never be enough netting to protect farm workers like Mykola out in the fields, people living along the front lines will soon see hundreds of kilometers of netting go up. What started as an experiment with discarded fishing nets is fast becoming the best way to stop unjammable drones.
Let's bring in Samuel Bendett. He's an adjunct senior fellow at the Center for a New American Security. Welcome back to DW. Given how effective these nets seem to be, at least for now, how do you expect Russia to adapt?
Well, Russians are also using the same type of nets to protect their routes, to protect the roads, to protect their locations. At the same time, as your reporter has indicated, these nets are not offering 100% solution because Russians can attack with several drones. So one actually punches the hole in the net and the other one flies in. And now everything that's inside that net road is actually trapped along with the drone. So Russians are dropping heavy munitions on the nets. They're launching multiple drones at the same time. Ultimately, all of these roads and all of these locations covered and protected by netting, has to be maintained. And so this is a very significant human-intensive effort where you need to check for holes in the netting, to maintain them, and to make sure that they're functional.
Isn't it risky then, in a way, for Ukraine to push Russia towards using larger, more powerful drones or more weapons at once that could break through the nets and then also potentially cause more damage?
Well, the netting is one of the solutions against adversarial UAVs. Again, both sides are using the same tactics. Russians are also stringing up netting along the same roads that they're using for their military applications as well. It's something that's available right now, and perhaps another technical solution will actually present itself in the near future. But for now, as your report has indicated, the netting seems to work.
Let's zoom out from the nets for a bit and look at the broader strategy at play here. Are Russia's off-the-shelf drone tactics, something we've of course also seen on the Ukrainian side, a deliberate evolution of their warfare doctrine or a workaround for limitations in their conventional defense industry's production capacity?
Well, it was mostly a workaround. This was an organic development back in 2022 when a lot of soldiers and volunteers and Russian civil society efforts have realized that their military is lacking a tactical means to fight and to observe the enemy at less than 5 or 6 kilometers from the line of contact. But also in 2020 and 2021, Russian military did recognize the importance of commercial type quadcopters or small quadcopters that could be used in tactical applications. And they took away those lessons from their involvement in the war in Syria. And if we go back to Russian military news in 2021, they were actually talking about starting to equip their forces with tactical quadcopters. But not much obviously resulted from that. And when the Russian forces ended up in attritional conflict against Ukrainian defenders, they essentially turned to civil society, and everybody started buying up DJI Mavic quadcopters, Autel quadcopters, these Chinese-made drones, and other similar civilian quadcopters and light UAVs to send to the military.
How much are other countries or non-state actors even taking note of the inventiveness on the battlefield?
Well, they're definitely taking notes, and we've seen the echoes of Ukraine combat. We've seen similar tactics and similar technologies applied in the Middle Eastern wars, in the Israel-Gaza war, in the wars between African state and African actors, in Latin America and Central America. We've seen that in South Asia, Southeast Asia. Essentially, a lot of these commercial type quadcopters and UAVs can be modified to carry munitions and explosives. And right now, there's a lot of information on how to do that in the public domain, in the Ukrainian language, in Russian language, in other languages. And so lots of militaries, lots of actors, lots of non-state actors, empowered individuals, well-funded groups are actually experimenting with those technologies.
So we're already seeing commercially available drones and fishing nets being used. What do you think could be next?
Well, obviously, everyone is working on artificial intelligence and a lot of AI capabilities, which are now enabling some of the tactical drones applications in the war in Ukraine, are actually commercial applications. They're using commercial microprocessors and microcomputers to enable these quadcopters and these UAVs to have target lock and image recognition so that these drones can fly to targets once these targets have been identified without operator input. And again, a lot of this is actually based on commercially available tech. So as artificial intelligence becomes more and more important in this war, we can expect more crossover with some of the dual-use technologies and commercial tech that enables AI and machine learning in these UAVs.
That's Samuel Bendett from the Center for New American Security. Thank you so much. Always great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Let's bring in Zachary Kallenborn, an adjunct fellow at the Centre for Strategic and International Studies at King's College London. Zachary, these nets look very low-tech and improvised. How exactly do they interfere with the drone's sophisticated attack capabilities?
Yeah, basically the idea is you just use the nets to create a barrier so that you simply, as you're flying around, you get caught in it and simply not be aware of what's happening. It provides a potentially useful passive defense, particularly in war zones, as we just saw. But how exactly it works in other cases is far from certain. We certainly don't want to have nets strung up all over the place in Berlin and London.
Now, the nets we saw in the report mostly seem to protect roads, but are they also practical for Ukraine's frontline military units, like artillery positions, for example?
They could potentially be useful. The challenge tends to be where exactly you set them up and how you deal with that. Because if you're in the middle of a battlefield, you don't exactly have time or opportunity to say, carefully select, we're going to string the net up here or have like the perfect size trees. But I believe Ukraine has been using a number of various camouflage nets and simple ad hoc things to help support. And certainly it can be useful.
Are there any ways to enhance these netting systems further to make them more reliable against faster or heavier drones, maybe?
Perhaps, but it depends really a matter of the material, where it's strung up. There has certainly been quite a bit of work looking at various net guns and things that would shoot and have greater degrees of acceleration so that you can respond more proactively and you don't necessarily need nice little passive defenses there. But there are certainly challenges with that.
In your view, are there any better, more sophisticated ways to protect people and infrastructure from these drones?
That's the perhaps billion-dollar question at this point. The challenge is almost cliche among drone experts to say there's no silver bullet when it comes to defeating drones. And it's cliche because it's true. It depends a whole lot on the size of the drone, their domain, how they're operating, what type of environment that you're working in. So, for example, if you're protecting a world leader, using an air defense system may not be a good idea because if you're, say, shooting over a crowd or other civilian actor and have drones and guns and bullets flying everywhere, that can be a big challenge. But, these net guns and nets, as you can see, may not necessarily work very well for some of these higher end drones where you have to use more sophisticated weapons.
Now, we've been hearing recently that Russia has begun using drones that are not radio controlled, but fiber optic cable controlled. What can be done against those because they're resistant to jamming?
Yeah, that's a huge challenge. Typically, jamming has been a lot of the go-to for defeating these systems. But that autonomy and that lack of jamming means that you have to rely very much on kinetic solutions. That is, things like surface-to-air missiles, air defense guns, nets, other types of things that will physically hinder the actual system itself. The nice thing is there are a variety of means to actually do that, things like air defense guns, surface-to-air missiles, microwave weapons, but they all have challenges and limitations.
Zachary Kallenborn there from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.